This short instructional on phonetic spelling will help you learn how to spell out things phonetically so that once you hear how they're supposed to be said, you can write that down and you'll be sure to say it the right way. So I used a few names I know of as examples. This one at the top here is supposed to be pronounced Asha, and you can see people can probably guess several different ways to have said this. Axa, Axa, I don't know what else they'd come up with, but it is Asha. And so somebody might be tempted to spell it out phonetically like this because the A makes the ah sound. They would put an A and then they would put sh. But you could also read this as Aisha or Aisha or even Aisha maybe. So it's important to remember that if you put just a letter, it's just that letter that's usually going to be pronounced. If you put a C, then people can say C. An I, people will say I. So the A by itself is pronounced A usually. So you don't want to put an A just because it has an A sound. Remember, A makes 3 different sounds. So you have to be more specific with it. And you do that by putting an AW, which makes the ah, or an AH, or sometimes an O in certain occasions, depending on what letters you put it with. But this one gets us closer, ah, sha, but still, this HA right here isn't guaranteed to get us the sound that we want. Here we have ah, sha, so we added a W, but it's still making the ah sound, and we don't want to call her Asha. Her name is Asha. So here's the best way to do it. Ah, sha. The UH. UH always use for your sounds because that's the best way to shortly denote an sound. AH is good for sounds or AW. IH is good for sounds. EH is good for sounds. If you do just E, people would say just E, or they might say, well, I don't know. They'd say it another way possibly. So adding the H helps. Here we have Jerica. Not many different ways you can come up with saying this, but you could say Jerica or Jerica, but her name is Jerica. So some people are tempted to use the letters already in the word and break it down like this. They would go Jerica. Well, that's not Jerica because J-E-R by itself is jer. That's the sound it makes. And I by itself is I. And C-A by itself isn't necessarily ka, it's more ka. Here we have jer, rhymes with hair, I-H, ka, C-U-H, and that spells it out so that there's no chance of mispronouncing it. This name is Jahora, and a lot of names that are hard to say correctly aren't spelled phonetically how you would think they'd be spelled. This is one of those cases. But the name is Jahora, and so if you put it like this, you got the hor part right, but J-O, even though it's at the beginning of the name, that's really not the sound. It's not Johora, it's Jahora. So you need something besides the J-O, and I think you have an idea what it is. And the A at the end, remember by itself it's going to be A. It should be a. And so here's the easy way to solve it. Jahora. Yeah, we have a lot of UHs, but that's the sound we want to get out. But sometimes, well, most of the time, there's a part of the word or name that you emphasize more than other parts. So it's good to capitalize that part. That way you don't say his name is Jahora, it's Jahora. And it's not Jahora, it's Jahora. So capitalizing the enunciated syllable helps. This one can be pronounced 2 ways, Brianna or Brianna. You could spell it B-R-E to get your Bree sound, ah with an A-W or an A-H, and then na, N-U-H to get the end. You can't do Bree, which you may be tempted to, B-R-I, because B-R-I, if you just sound it out, is Bri, not Bree. A by itself is just A, even though A sometimes makes a low A sound like that. And N-A is na, not na. And her name is not Brianna, not Brianna. it's Brianna. The other way to pronounce Brianna, we just took the Bri, we took the na, and we changed the middle to an an, which is a word that everybody already knows. So those are ways you just break it down, put the sounds in. If there's a part you need to emphasize, go ahead and capitalize that, and you should be good on denoting any types of phonetics.